Good evening, everyone, and welcome to our Ciac meeting this evening. I'm going to call the meeting to order. Just give me 1 second. Hi, everyone. Sorry about that. Just wanted to welcome you all to this evening's Ciac meeting. Just a reminder that the meeting is being recorded and we are live streaming tonight. So again, thank you for being with us. I would like to start with our opening prayer. So if you'll all join me in the sign of our faith, in the name of the Father and the Son and the Holy Spirit. We come together in hope from different community groups, answering the same call to service, pieces of the same puzzle. We come together in gratitude for the trust placed in us for the opportunity to serve, pieces of the same puzzle. We come together in respect, aware of our diversity, willing to work for the good, pieces of the same puzzle. We come together in awe of the wonder and beauty of each of God's children, pieces of the same puzzle. We come together in God's name, and as we work together toward the same goal, each piece of the puzzle begins to fit neatly into place, creating a breathtaking picture of love, compassion, courage, and grace. In the name of the Father and the Son and the Holy Spirit. Amen. And we're going to go to the land acknowledgement video now.
Each of us has a relationship to the natural environment, the land, water, earth, the habitat, and ecosystems. Land acknowledgements provide us with an opportunity to offer recognition, respect to the original inhabitants of the regions that we live in and work on. There are many things that we can do to go beyond simply reading a land acknowledgement script. To make it more meaningful, we need to consider that we are, in fact, acknowledging not only the ancestral lands, but also the historical and complex intersections of settler impacts on Indigenous histories, economies, ecologies, livelihood, well-being, and governance structures. A territorial acknowledgement is not an endpoint in the journey of reconciliation. Actions create conditions for true reconciliation and create a foundation for restoring, renewing, or developing a new relationship with Indigenous peoples. For hundreds of years, the Anishinaabe, the Haudenosaunee, the Attawaddaron, the Potawatomi, the Wendat, and Lenape nations have sought to walk gently on this land. They assisted the first European travelers to this territory and shared their knowledge for survival in what was, at times, a harsh climate. Under consultations from elders, knowledge holders from the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation and 6 nations of the Grand River Territory, the Indigenous Education Advisory Committee, along with Halton Catholic District School Board, created this land acknowledgement.
Halton, as we know it today,
is rich in the history and modern traditions
of many First Nations and the Métis.
From the lands of the Anishinaabe
to the Attawaddaron,
the Haudenosaunee,
and the Métis. These lands surrounding the Great Lake
are steeped in Indigenous history,
As we gather today
on these treaty land.
Our Catholic social teachings
Call us in solidarity
with our Indigenous brothers and sisters
to honor and respect
the four directions: lands, waters, plants, animals, and ancestors
that walked before us.
All these wonderful elements of creation exist,
gifted to us by our Creator God. We acknowledge and thank
the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation
for being stewards of this traditional territory.
Thanks so much, Andrea, for that. So we're going to move along to item number, We are going to move to item 1.2, which is the approval of the agenda. Everyone should have received that in their package. Did anybody have any questions or comments on the agenda? No. Okay, could I get a motion to move the agenda, approval of the agenda?
This is Paul. I'll move.
Thanks, Paul. So moved by Paul. Anyone to second?
Rick will second.
Thank you, Rick, for seconding. Moving right along to item 2.1. So this evening we do have a budget presentation. I'm happy to welcome Aaron Lofts, and Aaron is our Superintendent of Business Services and the Treasurer of the Board, and Adam Cross, who is the Senior Manager of Financial Services, and they'll be presenting on the special education budget to us this evening. I would just ask if it's okay to make a note of any questions that you may have, and perhaps we can do those at the end, just so that we can let Aaron and Adam get through their presentation, and then we can take questions if that works. Thanks very much for being here to both of you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So welcome everyone to our presentation on the 2021-2022 budget for Ciac. Now, unfortunately, although we were hoping that the 2021-2022 GSNs would have been announced mid-April, given the impact of COVID-19, this has been delayed. Therefore, Adam and I have put together a presentation, at least with the information we have available. And what we're really going to look at is what you see in front of you, focusing on the 2020-2021 revised estimate enrollment. We always kind of start there because that's the main driver for our funding. 2021-2022 budget consultation survey, specifically relating to special education and mental health, the list of the 2021-2022 Ciac priorities, and we'll also look at the revenue and expenses, both budgeted as well as what we have to date as of the end of February. Now, looking at enrollment, as you can see, the 2020-2021 revised estimate enrollment, so that's the one in blue, is significantly lower than what was estimated back in June. So the change can directly be attributed to COVID-19. So elementary enrollment, well, that was down about not 22%, let's hope not, 2.2% from what we estimated back in June, as well as the secondary enrollment was down about 2.1%. So as you can see, this marks a change in what has historically been a year-over-year increase in enrollment for our board. You can see that our trend has been going up, 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 and then you can see the green line for 2020, 2021 versus the blue line, which you can see is a significant decrease. So one thing I should mention is, although student enrollment has the largest impact in the classroom funding, and given the decrease that we're seeing right now, it should have resulted in a significant reduction in our funding based on what we estimated back in June. However, the ministry recognized this impact of COVID-19 on enrollment, and for 2020-2021 only, so currently the information we have is this only applies to the current year that we're in right now, boards were funded based on the enrollment initially estimated in June versus the enrollment that was estimated during revised estimate in December. So just to put that into context, the funding that we received in our GSN is based on that green line, the higher green line, and not the blue line, which was what we estimated halfway through the year in December or so. So the next slide we're going to look at is our budget consultation. So as you can see, these questions are from the survey, and these are the questions that are related directly to special education and mental health and well-being. So this demonstrates that all the responses we received, the majority of responses we received, were either in the category of somewhat important or very important. The next couple of slides will actually confirm this alignment with our 2021-2022 Ciac priorities.
So looking at the Ciac priorities, and as Aaron alluded to, they do align nicely with the results from the consultation survey. And just to remind the Ciac committee, our budget process is a consultative and collaborative process. So it's not just finances budget. We work very closely with the budget holders and the departments to assess what their programming needs are for the upcoming year. And then we work with the directors, superintendents, and other senior program staff to evaluate those programming needs of all the departments and analyze those needs against the funding that we are to receive from the Ministry of Education. So in terms of the Ciac priorities, there's a large number of priorities tied to additional resources and in terms of staffing, and that aligns with the results of the survey. There were lots of comments in the appendices of our survey results that spoke to the need for additional support staff. Some of the other priorities that we received from the Ciac committee relates to facility and equipment upgrades, specifically around washrooms, making sure that we have universal washrooms in all our schools, automatic accessible doors in all high traffic areas of our schools, and adaptive sports equipment. In terms of professional development and training, there are additional comments that we received with respect to specific PD for gifted programs, as well as development of pandemic and dedicated staff training for pandemic planning, which includes supports for online learning and in-class delivery. And then some technology awareness requests were part of the Ciac feedback that we received. So as part of the process, as we work through the department needs, we'll be trying to tie out the feedback we receive from the budget survey as well as the Ciac priorities into the needs for the special education department for the 2021-22 budget. In terms of budget challenges for the upcoming year, so the big one that we're facing right now as we prepare for the 2021-2022 school year is the fact that the ministry hasn't released the grants for student needs funding for the upcoming year. So as Aaron spoke to, we typically see that by now, by mid-April. Unfortunately, the last 2 years it's been delayed, and for good reason with the COVID-19 pandemic. Things are kind of a moving target at this point, and the ministry's focus, or the provincial government's focused on the healthcare sector right now. So education kind of is just waiting to receive what the funding might look like for next year. In terms of some expense uncertainties, so right now there's unknown continued costs and potential funding related to the COVID-19 pandemic as we move into the fall start of the next school year, as well as the costs associated with employee absenteeism. So this is a cost that it's always challenging as a school board to budget for and predict. We're also looking at increased technology costs, especially if we continue distance learning into 2021-22 school year. When we talk about technology, so it's all components, it's the hardware, it's the software, it's the internet access, as well as training on how to use devices as need be. One of the other large uncertainties with respect to the 2021-22 budget that does impact special education is potential increase in transportation costs. So this year, as part of pandemic safety protocols, we limited the capacity on our school bus. So this may continue into the 2021-2022 school year, as well as we required additional cleaning costs this year, and that may also continue going forward. In terms of special education, so historically within the funding envelope of special education, we see a shortfall in funding. In our 2020-2021 revised estimates, we projected that shortfall to be 4.9 million. So when we talk about enveloping of funds, so special education funding is tied specifically to special education, and it can't be used for other purposes within the board. However, we are able to use additional GSN funding, so not from Spec Ed, to help cover the costs of special education. So in order to kind of make special education whole for our budget balancing purposes, we utilize 4.9 million in the case of 2021 or 2020, 2021 from other GSN sources. So next we'll just highlight some of the revenue sources when it comes to special education, taking a look at the 2020-21 revised estimates that we reported in December to the ministry. So when we look at the special education grants, so this is a slide you would have seen in the past. There are multiple components that make up the grant, those being listed here. So the primary one is the special education per pupil amount, and you'll see that on the next slide in terms of how much funding we receive with respect to each one of these components. But the special education per pupil amount's the largest, and then these other ones are smaller, but still significant when it comes to the overall funding we receive for special education. So looking at our 2020-2021 revised estimates funding, you can see the special education per pupil amount was 28 million, just over 28 million. Our special education equipment amount was 1.7 million. Our projected measures of variability amount, which makes up 7 different components, totaled 18 million. Our special incident portion is 1.3 million. Our behavioral expertise, which is broken up into 2 components. The first component, the per pupil amount, so that relates to professional costs, so the hiring of staff or payment of professionals when it comes to behavioral analysis. And then the second piece is training with respect to this, and that's the smaller component at $2.95 per pupil compared to the professional portion, which is 5.93 per pupil. That adds up to $504,000. We have self-contained classrooms, which equates to $2 million in terms of the budget. And then finally, the last few components. So there is a small People Foundation grant component related to Spec Ed for educational assistance, and that's roughly $270,000 for last year. We did receive some priorities and partnership funding grants specifically tied to Spec Ed and mental health for a total of $779,000. And then our last component is the investments in system priorities, which was driven by collective agreements for $793,000. And then the last component just shows some more information about the C, so that specialized equipment component, for a net change of $700,000. So all total last year for the 2020-2021 school year, the total revenue for special education is $54.2 million. So looking at expenses, so where do we spend the $54 million? The primary drivers with respect to special education are salaries and benefit costs. So when we look at our Spec Ed budget, $21.6 million goes to teaching costs. Another $25.2 million goes to educational assistance. And then $8.7 million goes to professionals and paraprofessionals. So that includes central admin, social workers, CYC counselors, and the behavioral analysts. In terms of consultants, we spend about, or we budgeted 1.2 million for consultants for this current year, for a total of 56.9 million in salaries and benefit costs. We also have an additional 2.2 million in other expenditures for a total expenses of 59.1 million. So as you can see from the expenses, 96.2% of the total special education budget relates to salaries and benefits, and the remaining 2.2 or 3.8% relates to textbooks, travel costs of staff, classroom materials, supplies, technology equipment, and training. So a couple of things to point out that aren't included in the Ciac specific budget, but do tie to special education. One being the special education transportation. So those costs are captured as part of our transportation budget. And for the current year, it equated to $2.6 million. And then also just to point out that the superintendent and admin assistant for special education are covered under the board's admin and governance grant. So there's a separate funding source for that, so it doesn't go against the revenue we receive for special education.
So as you can see, we have a shortfall from what we're funded of 54.2 million versus what we expect our expenses to be, about 59.1 of about $4.9 million. So although this is lower than what we estimated back at the original estimates in June, it's still a significant amount. Having said that, people might ask, where is that funded from? Adam alluded to this earlier, that 4.9 million is taken from other areas of the GSN. So when Adam was talking earlier about the enveloping, I guess the enveloping idea, or the definition of what an envelope is, that means that $54 million that we receive in special education funding, we can't spend that $54 million on anything else other than special education expenses. But having said that, we can spend over that amount when it comes from different areas of the GSN funding allotment. And that's what we as a board have done in the past, and what we agreed to at the 2020-2021 budget process back in June, as well as the revised estimates back in December. So what we also have is another area here, and what this is looking at our 6 months ended February 28th, so approximately halfway through the year. Maybe if we go to the next slide, Adam, if we could, just to look at the totals. So right now we're tracking actually a little lower than where we were last year at this time. But having said that, overall, we're still tracking to have our special education expenses significantly higher than what our revenue is. So even though we're lower right now, and that's for a variety of reasons, we still are expecting that our expenses will be greater than what our revenue is estimated for this upcoming year. So that concludes our presentation. Unfortunately, we wish we had more information on the funding. As you can understand, the majority of a lot of these decisions are based on how we're funded for the upcoming year. As it stands right now, we are unsure, given that the GSNs, or the Grant for Student Needs, has not been released as of yet. So now we'll kind of open it up for questions. Madam Chair, are you going to, I guess, direct us in this area?
Yeah, I'm just watching the chat actually, and I don't know if my chat is working, so I'm just going to.
I'll take a look too then.
Okay.
I don't see anything right now.
Okay, does anybody have any questions at all for Aaron or Adam?
Do you see that?
It is working. Okay, yeah, Maria, go ahead.
Hi there. As an accountant, I can't forego a finance presentation and not have questions. One thing, there was a few facility items listed that were put forth by Ciac members, and I'm just wondering, I guess one of them was with respect to having accessible doors, and I was just surprised, are we not already there? Do we actually have schools that don't have accessible doors? And my second question would be, would that not be funded out of the facilities budget? Does that come out of the special education budget, or that would seem to me to be a facilities item? So I'm just wondering about that.
Sure. Maybe I'll start first, Adam. If I miss anything, please jump in. So you're right. Going back to the budget part of it, there would be a facility component to that. So that is correct, Maria or Ms. Lorenko. So you are correct there. There would be a large portion of that would be coming from the facility budget. Now, with respect to the number of, I guess, doors that aren't accessible right now, unfortunately, don't have that with me right now. That's something that facility tracks. Now, obviously, with all our new builds, I would assume the majority of those builds, if not all of our new builds, would be accessible right from the get-go. So I think this might be referring more to our older structures that we have in the board. Where that would come into play. And again, this were things that were brought forward. So whether it comes out of the budget for special ed or not, it's a need that the Ciac has brought forward to us to present. So
Right.
it'll be something that we would be talking to facilities about as well.
Well, yeah, and I would definitely think that's a priority to have. Oh, sorry. Did you want to say something, Brenda?
Well, sorry, Maria, I was actually just going to say, I know for a fact that some of the situation with the doors might be that they may have originally had doors, let's say, that were accessible leading into the building. And then through the various needs of the students they have, they realize that they need an accessible door for the library or the gym or, another. So I know that that happens depending on how the student population changes within that school. So I just wanted to comment on that.
Well, thanks, Madam Chair.
Yeah, no, that's great. Yeah.
We did when we saw this come through as one of the comments from Ciac, we did reach out to facilities to discuss with them, and they indicated to us that they have been going through all the schools, making sure that the high traffic areas do have all accessible doors, and they told us that by September that all high traffic external and internal doors will have openers. So there might be some schools that are a little behind, probably due to COVID and not being able to necessarily be in the schools when we want to, with respect to facilities and employees, but they are working on making sure that all schools, at least in the high traffic areas, have accessible doors. And that does come out of the facilities budget, not the Ciac budget.
Okay, that's great. Thank you. Yeah, and I mean, obviously, yeah, that's really important. I don't think anyone would disagree with that. And I just wanted to understand, so 5.7 million was the original estimated shortfall. And based on revised estimates, it's 4.9 million. So that's an $800,000 positive variance, I guess. And I'm just wondering, what are the main factors behind that?
And do you want me to start or do you want to?
Yeah, I guess I can start. So as part of the revised estimates, the funding numbers move when it comes to enrollment and things of that nature. So what happened is when the funding kind of changes, we adjust our expenses accordingly. And then we also received additional funding from original estimates to revised in the forms of additional priorities and partnership funding that was announced. So then that helped offset some of the costs that we were already budgeting to pay for, regardless of whether we were going to get the funding. But now, once it had been announced by December, we were able to incorporate the revenue side of those costs to kind of offset some of the components.
Okay, so it's more of on the revenue side that contributed to that, sounds like.
Yeah, it's primarily driven off of the revenue and getting additional funds between original estimates when we presented that in I guess August to the board, and then any additional PPF or specialized grants announcements between August and December.
Okay, and then just my last question. There was a number in there, just over $2 million, that was an allocation for pupils in these special education classrooms. And I'm just wondering how that number is determined. Is that like the GSN for all those students that gets kind of transferred over?
Do you want me to, maybe I'll tackle that one first, Adam, and then you can jump in if I miss something. So really what that is, Ms. Lorenko, is that it's the funding that's based on the number of self-contained classes we have in the system. And essentially what that's doing is allocating funding based on a formula through our EFIS, is what our revenue calculator for our GSNs. And it's bringing money over from other areas of the GSN to relate specifically to the self-contained classrooms. So based on the number of self-contained classrooms we have, that revenue is reallocated from other areas of the GSN over to special education.
Okay, so it's not additional funding from the ministry. It's moving funds over to try and match the revenue and expenses better.
That's actually a good way to put it. Yeah, it's not additional funds. It's more moving money not internally, but in the GSN over to match those expenses, or at least try to match those expenses.
Yeah, kind of for analysis purposes, because you're trying to show the revenues and expenses that are related.
That's right.
Yeah, okay, thank you. That's it for me.
Thanks, Maria. Was there anybody else that had any questions at all for Adam and Aaron? I know that the budget is always a hot topic, and there's usually questions, recognizing that we don't have as much information as we would like, but is there anybody else that has any questions?
And I
Nope.
apologize, everyone. Usually I have my camera on for these kind of presentations, but my internet's a little slow today, and it seems to be, I don't know if it's the Rogers issue or what,
Yeah.
but yeah, I'm just trying to conserve bandwidth.
Yeah, no worries at all, Aaron. I'm not seeing any other questions or any other hands up in the chat. I'm just taking another look. So I would say that you guys are off the hook for any other questions. So what I would say is, as always, if any of the members of our committee have questions that may come up after this, or you've had a chance to process the information and take another look through, if you need to clarify or ask some further questions, please let us know, and we can have Aaron and Adam address those questions. So thanks to both of you for being here. We really appreciate it.
Thanks, everyone. Stay safe,
Thank you
everyone.
for having us.
Okay.
Take
Bye,
care.
guys.
Bye.
Bye.
Okay. So moving along, we are at item number 3, which is the approval of the minutes from our last Ciac meeting. Everybody would have received a copy of those minutes in their package. Was there any questions or comments on the minutes of the meeting? No? Okay, could I get a motion to move the approval of the minutes?
Sure, I like my name in the minutes, Paul.
Okay, so I see that, so Paul and then Diane also made a comment, so we can say moved by Paul, seconded by Diane. Thank you both. Okay, item number 4, is there any declarations of conflict of interest? No? Okay, business arising from previous meetings. That would have also been sent out with the package, the meeting package. Was there any questions or anything needing to be discussed on the business arising? No? Good? Okay. I'm trying to wait a little bit in case people's internet are slow. So, okay, we're moving along to item number 6, which is the Special Education Board Policy Review. So policy number II-29, inclusion and range of placement options for identified exceptional students. The red line version was sent out to the members of our committee with some revisions that from the input at the March meeting. So here it is in front of you. Like we said, it was also included in your meeting package. And this policy will be placed on the May 11th policy meeting agenda. So I'm opening the floor to any questions as it pertains to the policy. If you've had a chance to take a look at it, are we okay with the suggested changes? Yep, Maria, go ahead.
So, as you know, ABC did submit some feedback with respect to this policy. It's not included in the report, but I'm hoping that members have had a chance to read through it. I don't know if anyone had any questions or comments. We didn't receive anything. But I would, given that it's not in the report, I'd like to maybe go through it, try and go through it kind of at a high level, and maybe ask that it be included in the minutes as similar to an association report would be. So I guess on a more general level would be that in reading the policy, it sounds as if the board provides 5 placement options to all students that need them, which we know isn't the case. The board doesn't offer all 5 to every student in every grade. So we felt that that should be reflected in the policy as to what the board actually does offer. And in our feedback, we sort of gave a few examples of where it says that. It also doesn't talk about any exceptions and what happens in the case of exceptions. So, if a student's needs and learning profile might indicate that they would be best placed in a special education class, but the board doesn't offer that, what does the board do? It doesn't address that situation. And of particular concern to ABC as representing gifted students is where there is a disruption to the placement option. So gifted students may be in a special education class in elementary, and even if their needs don't change, that placement's not available to them in secondary. So the policy doesn't really address any of that. We feel that it would be best to have a chart or something in the policy that does indicate what in fact the board does currently offer, as well as articulating how they're meeting the needs of students where an indicated placement might not be available or there's no continuity. And then given that there is that disruption for gifted students between elementary and secondary, we're also recommending a placement be created at the secondary level for gifted students, not a secondary class because we recognize that the numbers and the demand isn't there, but something that would sort of be more similar to kind of lessen that disruption, I guess. And I know we've had some good discussions about transitions, and there's been some great recommendations from staff, but a lot of it is sort of just letting those students know what the options are for them in high school with lots of time to plan and so on. But it's still unclear how these students are kind of being prepared for the change in learning environment and no longer being with their neurodivergent peers. Back in 2019, the board did agree after some reports to an informal approach to clustering. But the feedback we've received and our own observations is that's not really happening consistently, and not all staff and parents are even aware that this is an option. So we're looking for something a little bit more sort of intentional, formal, and we've looked at what some other boards do, and other boards have something, I guess, best described as a clustering option, where the students are in a regular class, but efforts are made, and it varies depending on the boards and what kind of numbers they have, but efforts are made to put gifted students together so that they can work together and be with their peers. We also wanted to recognize that a lot has changed since that recommendation was made in 2019. Our whole world has changed, and COVID has definitely added some challenges to this informal approach, and we don't really know where we're going. I mean, when are we coming out of this, and what's it going to look like on the other end? So among other things, the board has used extracurricular activities to bring together like-minded students, provide some enrichment opportunities, but those aren't really happening now. There's been a lot of learning loss from the pandemic. The ministry's bringing in de-streaming, which will increase the range of not only abilities, but student readiness in any particular given classroom. And, that's going to increase the pressures and demands on teachers in particular, because they're going to have all these different students in different spots that they have to address, and they'll likely focus on the students that are struggling. But by having some gifted students together in a class, they can work and collaborate independently with a little bit of intervention from the teacher, who can then focus on all the other students. And lastly, in order for that to really work, it needs to happen where there's sort of a bigger number of gifted students, because obviously it's hard with small students. They have, spread out over a number of grades and different electives and so on. We know that many gifted students are already choosing AP or IB programs, so they're sort of already congregating in those schools. So the numbers are there more than anywhere else to allow for something like this to happen. So our sort of final recommendation would be something like a secondary gifted cluster placement provided on a regional basis at schools where there's pre-AP/AP or IB courses in order to reach a critical mass and provide the greatest opportunity for success. So that's kind of my high level of what has been shared. I don't know, Jessica, if I've missed anything, because we obviously worked on this together. But did I miss any key points?
Thank you, Maria. Madam Chair, if I may add, I just wanted to clarify, referring to the external boards who utilize a regular classroom to create such a placement. I just want to mention that, yes, the AP and IB sites do attract, naturally, more of the gifted students, but this wouldn't necessarily be an AP placement kind of spaghetti program. This will be considered a regular classroom placement, whether students are in the AP program, because, for example, the AP program itself, not all students enroll in all AP courses. So it could be a homeschool for students who are in the academic stream, or it could be students taking a combination of AP and regular courses. What we're asking for is wherever the student has chosen to take the courses, whether it be AP, mainstream, or IB, that they need to be interclustered by identifying that placement as a regular classroom, clustered kind of resource assistance. And because this is a regular resource class, regular classroom placement, students do not need to have to go through an IPRC to be in the same classroom as non-identified students. I think this is where we can meet the needs of both the students who want to be clustered and not interested in clustering, because those who are already benefiting from being in a placement where they want to be will not be shortchanged because the change wouldn't impact them. Whereas the students who could benefit from such clustering, they would gain. So that's why ABC think that this is the best recommendation, in agreement with the board's recommending and acknowledging that clustering and being inclusive of the gifted students' needs. This would be our best recommendation to put forth to consider. Thank you.
And I just want, sorry, Jessica, are you done or?
Yeah.
Okay, I just wanted to add one thing that I think I kind of missed that helps to explain the context of all of this, is that we know through gifted research and also through a lot of anecdotal evidence over the years with ABC that opportunities to collaborate with like-minded peers are essential to not only the academic success of gifted students, but also to their mental health and well-being, which we know is something that there's a lot of focus on right now. And I think will continue to be an issue even as we come out of this, because of what we've all been through and our youth have been through in, a year plus. So I think, I mean, there's certainly lots we could say, but I think I'd like to see if anyone has any questions or comments at this point.
Great, thanks, Marie and Jessica. So that was a lot to unpack. I'm wondering if, before we get to any other questions or comments from people, perhaps, Stephanie, I don't want to put you on the spot, but do you want to comment on anything that was said?
Sure. Good evening, everybody. Yes, as you said, there was a lot that was mentioned, and I did receive the feedback. Sorry, my camera's not working great either. I'm just going to turn it off right now. I did receive the feedback from ABC, as did all of Ciac. So there were a number of issues as they were outlined in the document, 6 actually, and Maria's given an overview of some of the points that were brought forward. I think that if we speak in general terms to each of the points that have been raised, the first being around the full range of placement. We do offer a range of placements based on exceptionality, and if there's some language in the document that is misleading, that's certainly something that we could look at. We do have the chart, and that was the second point that was raised with the placement options. It's included in our special education plan. And we have, as a follow-up to the meeting that we had in March, we added the link to the special education plan. This policy is structured as a high-level document, and as I mentioned before, the corresponding operational document that pertains to this policy in particular is the special education plan. It is reviewed annually. We have to report to the ministry. We are very transparent in that plan with respect to the placement options that we offer. I would not necessarily be opposed to adding the appendix to the policy. We have done that in other policies where we felt that it was really informative, I suppose, to the reader. But I do want to note that we did include the link to the plan because when we have it as an appendix, if that's what is decided or if that's a consideration, it's then in isolation. But it is something that we have done in the past with respect to adding an appendix. I do want to point out, though, and I think it speaks to the point that I'm making, that the two examples that were included in the feedback, both Halton District and Simcoe, as noted in the feedback that we received, those excerpts and the language that are included there were pulled from those board special education plans. That language with respect to congregated clustering program and modifying the resource support options are not in fact included in their policies. They are included in the special education plan because that is, like I said, the go-to place for the operational information. So it would be I would offer, and we have talked about updating our special education plan. I think the best place to include any statements with respect to clustering should be included in the spec ed plan and not a policy. As I also think that we need to be careful because the policy does refer to a range of placement options, and as has been said, clustering is not a placement option that's mandated by the ministry. We are following the language that's used by the ministry, and I would not want to mislead anyone who's reading this policy to be under the impression that clustering is a placement option. We are committed to clustering students. We have done a lot of work with respect to that, and I can call on Jody shortly as well, who can speak to some of the messaging to our department heads. And we definitely are committed to that. And I think that I would be open, of course, it's up to you as well, to include the statements within our special education plan. And then I guess I could speak to the ask with respect to resource support and breaking it out by the type of resource support. Again, we're following the ministry definition of placement options, and when we look at the requirements in terms of the list of options, it states a regular class with resource assistance, and within that placement option is a definition, and we're following that definition, and there's no requirement, nor have I seen many boards breaking out their resource assistance into anything that is more detailed than that. And I think that if we want to include the clustering, like I said, I think it's about where do we include reference to clustering. And I think I've made my point that I don't believe that it belongs in a policy document that speaks to a range of placement options when it's not a placement option. I can pause there if you'd like, Brenda.
Yeah. Did you want, you mentioned about having Jody
Sure.
comment. Did you want Jody to comment on any of that?
Sure, Jody, I know she's on.
Sorry to put you on the spot, Jody.
Oh, that's okay. No problem at all. I'll keep my camera on for now, but you never know. It hasn't been good. I got kicked off earlier today. So yeah, thank you, Stephanie and Brenda. So I just wanted to add that our messaging continues to be that where possible, we do cluster students. So as you mentioned, Maria, so they can be with us at my Obviously, it depends on timetabling and the number of students there, but it is an option. Something you did mention was that I think it was anecdotally or some feedback that you've received is that parents might be unaware. That point is taken and could be part of our transition plan as we support our grade 8 to grade 9 transition, to be intentional about some of that language around the possibility. If it's of interest to students, we know that some gifted students may not be interested in something like that. So make parents aware that where possible, that is an option if they have interest in that. So we will continue to provide that support and messaging to our families, but as well to our department heads and CERTs.
Great, thanks, Jody. Jessica, I see that you have your hand up.
Thank you. Sorry, I took it down because Jody was talking, but thanks for
worries.
remembering, Brenda.
No worries.
And thank you, Jody, and thank you, Stephanie, for all your information there. I just wanted to say again, I do appreciate having the link to the spaghetti plan. And as I mentioned before, I think I agree that appendix can be rather too lengthy, but if you have the link of the spaghetti plan there, and if this policy has directly to do with placement options, I think referencing the exact page number that the hyperlink can lead to would be great for the parents, so they don't have to look through all the pages. And I agree that the policy itself wouldn't be a place where you would have to list the wording or the exact wording of the clustering and so the description. But I guess what ABC is looking for is actually creating a placement, whether it be in the spaghetti plan or the policy. I think that's why we brought it up to the table here to see what our members think, because we are all here for our students. And ABC clearly is concerned that our gifted students' needs are not continuously met through as they transition to the high school. And Jody, I do appreciate you and the board contacting staff and the ARDHs and letting them know to work with their guidance to intentionally cluster. But the numbers at certain schools just don't allow for that clustering to happen. And it was very difficult for Maria to give just a high level overview of the intention and the reason behind our request for this new placement. But I want the members and staff to consider that clustering that you would love to offer and you acknowledge is absolutely necessary for many gifted students is just not possible the way the students are scattered currently throughout the board. And finally, Stephanie, yes, the ministry mandates those 5 placements to meet the needs of the students, but according to the policy, that same policy, boards are not limited to those options only. And we are all here for our students. And I think we really need to be looking at not just fixating on the language of the ministry. The board is allowed to explore and create options to better serve the students. And what we are asking for is still a regular classroom placement, whether you add the additional words of secondary gifted placements, such as the Halton District Board, or adding the other word of congregated description as the Simcoe District Board. That is not the main point here. We are not fixating on the language of the placement. We're asking the members here tonight to consider creating a placement where their needs can be met. Thank you.
Thank you, Jessica. Did staff want to respond to that? If not, I have some other hands up in the chat.
You can go ahead, Brenda.
Okay, great. Thanks, Stephanie. Paul, you have your hand up. Do you want to go ahead?
Yes, sure. I've got a couple of questions first. I'm just wondering if the reason why all 5 placement options are not offered to all exceptionalities. Is it a policy decision? Is it a logistics? Is it a financial decision? Again, I'm not an expert in this field, but I'm just wondering why all options are not offered to all exceptionalities. And if it's a policy decision, why a certain placement option wasn't offered, then I think it should be in the policy. If it isn't, then it should be in the operational or in the or annual plan. Is that clear?
Yeah, was that a question, Paul, or just a comment?
No, it's a question.
Okay. Okay. Who is your question for?
For whoever can answer it. I just
Okay.
want to know, I don't want to know the reasons why, but just the underlying it. Is it a policy direction that we don't offer placement options, or is it because of financial or logistics or practicality reasons, and therefore it should be in their operational document rather than the policy document?
Okay. Stephanie, do you want to take that, or Jody?
Sure, I can start.
Great.
And I would say that, Paul, all of those reasons that you gave are the operational decisions and rationale that are used in terms of making placement option decisions. So boards do make determinations as to what the placement options are that they will be offering for their school board. And that is the chart that's being referred to, whereby the available placements that are being offered by the board are outlined. So hopefully that helps.
Paul, did you have a follow-up?
Yeah, I just want to know, like, so to me, if policy, it should be general. It shouldn't, and I've mentioned this before, I don't think it should be specific, exceptionality specific. It shouldn't only mention one exceptionality in the document. It should be a general document. But if it's a policy, like if we had all the money and all the logistics in the world, we'd offer everything. That's one question. But for some reason, because of because it just doesn't make sense or something like that, we're never going to offer that placement option to that exceptionality, then maybe a chart is needed in that. But if it's strictly something that if we had all the money in the world and everything, we'd offer it to everybody, then it should be, I believe it should be into the annual plan. If that makes sense at all. Sorry, I'm talking at it, not very knowledgeable in this area.
Oh, that's okay. Okay. Maria, you have your hand up?
Yes, I do. So I'll just try and remember my different thoughts here. Just in respect to Paul's comment about that the policy should be general and not speak to a specific exceptionality. I just want to clarify, I agree. I guess our point was that it would show for all the exceptionalities what the placement options are. And our ask is specific to an exceptionality as an ask. And because, you know, we don't know what the needs are, the gaps are for other exceptionalities. So certainly, but that's not in terms of the policy focusing on one placement. It's, you know, we're coming forward and asking for a placement, and whether this is the place to do it or the spec ed plan is the place to do it, you know, let me know what meeting we can, you know, we're having the discussion now. So regardless of where it belongs, I mean, we can debate that, but that's not really the important thing. Where it's showing is whether it's there. And I just want to address the comments about the anecdotal piece, because, you know, and I don't want to say too much because I don't want to compromise anybody's confidentiality, but we do know of parents that wanted clustering this year and were told that it couldn't happen because the other gifted students were in a different cohort in the high schools, and they wouldn't budge, you know, just to move the one student where it was requested. Additionally, and it didn't even occur to me at the time until I started to think through our feedback now, but at the gifted open houses, a common question from parents is, you know, what's the gifted program in high school? And the answer has always been, and it didn't change even though this report came along and we said we were going to do this clustering where we could, the answer has always been that there is no program and they go back to their home school, you know, or they can attend another school where if they're interested in another program, but that's not a placement and that there's no transportation and all of that. But there was no mention whatsoever that this was happening. And then on the other hand, I don't have any evidence of where it is happening. So I'm not saying it isn't, but I'm saying the feedback we've received is concerning and would suggest that it's, I'm sure it's happening in some places, but not to the extent. And, whereas the board did commit to maintaining other placement options in the case of virtual learning, all of our students who have a special education class, even if they chose virtual learning, they're still being provided with a special education class, which is great. But we didn't see that same sort of commitment to the clustering, and so I think a formal placement kind of maybe changes that. And we've seen it in other boards. It's not every board. It is a placement in those boards. They do have it as their placement. So it's possible, just okay, everyone isn't doing it, sure. But some boards are doing it, and I guess we're just asking, and our coterminous board is doing it. And we know that we lose gifted students to our coterminous board. We know that anecdotally, and we know that from statistics that have been shared with Ciac, that it's, around 20%. So I guess I just wanted to make those other comments, and I don't know if anyone else has any other comments. I do have some more that I'd like to say, but I just want to see if anyone else has anything that they want to add or questions.
Okay. Yep, for sure. Does anybody have any other comments, questions, input, anything that they wanted to discuss upon review of this? Yeah, Rick, go ahead.
Hi, everyone. Through you, Madam Chair. With respect to the, like Maria just mentioned, the 20%, and it's here the 20% historically loses from the elementary panel to the secondary panel. I know you'd removed that table from the previous email that was sent out, but I just want to know where the information, the information in that table is. It's pretty specific. Is that based on the board's information that ABC came up with, or sorry, board's information that was provided to ABC, or did ABC, is that from their own internal surveys, or just wondering where that information came from, because it's pretty specific regarding enrollment and accommodations and people for school.
Sorry, I don't want to cut you off.
Go ahead, Maria.
Yeah, we removed that table because there was some concerns around confidentiality, and so I don't want to get into where that information came from. I can say it's a valid source. I want it, because it's come up, I just want to be clear, because this is a public meeting. There was no personal or private information shared in that schedule. The concern was that with that information, if a person had additional information, they could put two and two together and maybe figure out something that should be confidential. But I will say, in terms of the retention number, that was shared at a Ciac meeting. I don't remember which one. It was with respect to when the surveys were being done, the gifted students and then the gifted parents, and some of that other reporting. I do remember the number being around 80%, and that was shared publicly in a meeting. So I don't have the reference at my fingertips, but so it did come from the board.
Thanks, Maria. I see Stephanie's hand up, but Rick, I want to see if you had a follow-up.
No, I think that's fine. My follow-up question was going to be what are the confidentiality concerns? Because there's like the obvious ones. So there's no names, there's no way to link, there's no addresses, no phone numbers, no contact info, obviously. But I guess releasing that data with such specific information and resources provided per grade, per school, I guess that is close enough to a kind of a privacy concern that I guess it shouldn't be put up into a public forum. So. That's all. Thanks. Thank you.
Thanks,
Rick. As I said, we had the issue was, if you have that information and you have other information, you could put two and two together. That was really the issue. Because I agree with you, there was, and that's why we didn't think it was an issue to share it, because there wasn't anything personal. But we respected that concern and we removed it. So,
Stephanie, you have your hand up. Go ahead.
Yes, I just wanted to speak to a staff report that was conducted, and Maria had spoken to some statistics. I've taken a quick look. I don't see that, but I do want to remind Ciac that a very extensive and involved staff report was presented in September of 2019 at a board meeting entitled Clustered Classes and Accelerated Learning Opportunities. And it was determined that the report be part of the superintendent report at Ciac as an information item. So it didn't move further beyond that. And if anyone is looking for more information, including very specific conclusions that were drawn by a very large group of staff who were involved in that staff report. At that time, it was the superintendent of education. It involved student success. It involved curriculum services, school services with respect to AP and IB. It also included research, planning, assessment with respect to looking at schools, transportations, etc. So it was a very fulsome staff report. And as I said, it was reviewed at the board meeting and it was determined that it should be shared as an information item at Ciac. And you may find some interesting information there. I know I did. And I also wanted to speak to the points that were raised about clustering and including that language and the commitment to clustering students. As Jody mentioned, we've already made some changes this year with respect to our transition communication to parents and being very intentional and being very explicit with parents that it is an option at the secondary level. We are not denying that by any means, and we do stand behind the fact that Ciac has the opportunity to provide feedback for the special education plan, and we can further expand on clustering in that plan. And I would also add, that if there were any anecdotals or incidents that are coming to the attention of ABC, that you please reach out and let us know of that. And I had a opposite example. Definitely the cohorts have had some impact with lots of things. And we are aware of a separate example where the school actually made the accommodation to move a student to a different cohort in order to allow clustering to take place.
Okay, thank you, Stephanie. Maria, you had your hand up again?
Yeah, I just in terms of that clustering report that came out in 2019. I mean, I think it's disappointing that ABC wasn't involved in that at all. We did issue a report as well. We had some concerns with some of what was in that report. We issued reports on the surveys as well, and we didn't really see them addressed. But anyway, that being said, I think what I kind of want to wrap up with is that it's not, academic accomplishments are obviously important. That's why students are in school. But there's more to it here, and maybe that's what we haven't talked about as much. We know that spiritual, social, emotional development and wellness, physical and mental health and well-being are just as important. And if a student's mental health and well-being, as well as a feeling of belonging, those things are not important only in and of themselves, but they're also critical to academic achievement. And that's reflected in the 3 pillars of our board: achieving, believing, belonging, as well as the board's equity and inclusion policy, which was added to this policy as an associated policy. And we all recognize the importance of mental health, and the pandemic has certainly brought increased awareness and concerns around that aspect. And in recent years, there's been increased awareness of the importance of inclusion, especially for marginalized or vulnerable groups. And this feeling, again, it's important not only for the social emotional needs, but also as a foundation to academic success. But it's difficult for students to achieve if they don't feel a sense of inclusion and belonging. And I remember that in the discussions about the equity and inclusion policy. And I think what a lot of people might not understand is that gifted students often don't feel that they belong just because they're with their same aged peers. And some people see this as, elitism or arrogance, but that's not it. Part of the problem is the gifted label. But what we're really talking about is neurodivergent students. And a lot of our students with other exceptionalities are also neurodivergent in different ways. And gifted students are neurodivergent in a way that they think differently and they perceive the world differently and their minds work differently. And part of how that manifests is they might grasp concepts faster, but also in very different and sometimes abstract ways, and sometimes in ways that they can't even explain. And so sometimes they're perceived as odd amongst their same age peers. And they're also acutely aware that they're seen this way. And so they often hide who they are so that they, in an effort to fit in, and they can be ridiculed or bullied. And I just wanted to share some comments because a few years ago, some of our elementary school students who were in a gifted elementary class shared the following comments in a delegation to the board. They said, once we transferred into the gifted classes, it was only then that we realized there are more factors that lead to true friendships and understanding. We realized through many of our classmates' conversations that we tried to just fit in with others in our previous schools because we would hear others making comments about us being different and sometimes not so positively. This made us uncomfortable and we got used to keeping our thoughts and ideas to ourselves as we didn't want to be singled out. But here in our current environment, we can express our ideas and thoughts freely without being penalized as we understand each other's mindsets. And similar sentiments were expressed by gifted secondary students in the 2018 student survey, who gave the following comments as explanations as to why they would choose a gifted program in secondary if it was offered. People around me don't tend to understand how I think, and I feel it has hindered my social development as I'm bullied and excluded for my differences. I find it easier to be myself with others who think like I do. It would be nice to go back to that same sort of environment. I don't fit in with other kids. I enjoy learning with people the same pace as me. So I think we can all agree that nobody should have to hide who they are, and that can be very damaging. So some neurodivergent students never really feel that sense of inclusion and belonging with their neurotypical same-aged peers. And this impacts their academic accomplishments, as well as their social, emotional, and spiritual development. And we can see that in the comments from our own students. So what we're simply asking for is for the students who need it and want it is direct, intentional efforts to ensure they have the opportunities to learn and work with their neurodivergent peers, to increase their sense of belonging, and ultimately their academic success they're achieving. And we recognize that not every student, we're not asking for this to be done for every student, obviously. Recognize that for those who choose this option, it would not be available for every class. And what we're asking for is modeled after options provided in other boards, which are also approved by the ministry in their special education plans. So creating this new placement wouldn't take anything away from the students who are satisfied where they are, but it would do something for those who aren't. And that's really the point of having, a range of placements. So that concludes my comments.
Thanks, Maria. I don't see any other hands up in the chat or any other comments on this. So if everybody's okay and they've had their say, we can move on to the next action item, and this policy will go to the May 11th policy meeting on the agenda. Okay, and yeah, perfect. Thanks, Andrea. So next on the agenda is 7.1. So this is the 2021-2022 Ciac meeting dates. These dates were also sent along, these proposed dates were also sent along with the meeting package for your review. So if you can take a look at the ones in front of you. Again, these are proposed dates. Anything could change, but as of right now, the only comment that I would make is with respect to April 25th, which is a proposed PA day at this point. I know that we have in the past had a Ciac meeting on a PA day, so I don't know how much of an issue that would be for anyone. It's an evening meeting, but was there any questions or comments on the proposed meeting dates? No. Okay, so Andrea, will we get notification when those have been confirmed? Or Stephanie, sorry, whoever.
Yes, we will, Brenda, once the calendar is confirmed, but for now, I would accept them as are.
Okay, perfect. Great, thank you. Great, thanks, Andrea. Okay, moving on to item number 8, so communication to Ciac. We have 8.1, which is the superintendent's report. Stephanie, did you want to go ahead?
Yes, and through you. I'm gonna try my camera again. Right, so we'll start with the first heading in my report, speaks to equity and inclusion. As a department, I thought it was important to share that we have been working very closely with Sita, our Senior Manager of Human Rights and Equity, over the course of this year, actually, on a collective focus that includes all staff in our department at both the board and school-based special education staff. In March and April, we're focusing on developing learning goals and the review of culturally responsive pedagogy models, which are highly relevant for educational and clinical work performed by special education staff. During these sessions, staff are developing guiding questions to support their evaluation of resources and programs through a lens of cultural responsiveness. And Jody and Denise Colley have taken the lead in organizing these sessions in collaboration, as I mentioned, with CETA. In addition, the social work team has been offering professional development regarding trauma and racialized trauma for the virtual school staff. So we are really being mindful to be inclusive with the teachers who are part of the virtual school. And lastly, with respect to equity and inclusion, the psychologists, social workers, our child and youth counselors, behavior analysts, as well as our special education leadership team will receive some professional development from Indigenous psychotherapist Dennis Wendigo in May, specifically related to land-based treatment methods. And we were referred to Dennis by Sherry Savo, who is our advisor. Moving on, we did have a second collaborative learning community for our structured teaching class and life skills class staff. It was held earlier in the month. Several guest speakers from the following community partners presented to our staff: Developmental Services Ontario, Halton Support Services, and Community Living Ontario. Other topics that were facilitated by our board staff to our STC and life skills staff included transition resources, community pathways, and they unveiled the family transition guide to the staff. They also spoke to the GROW program at Thomas Merton, and that's a program which provides individuals with developmental disabilities the opportunity to develop and enhance their employment, education, and/or independent skills. And it is a program that's designed to address the needs of adults who are hoping to enter or re-enter the job market. And individual programs are developed based on student goals. Classes are free, but space is limited, and the class is currently based in Burlington, and intake is continuous. It runs from September to May, and candidates must be 19 or over and eligible to work in Canada. So I thought it was interesting to give a little information about the GROW program. And I also wanted to mention that Project Search, we already had a presentation from Lisa Baca, and we will be conducting the virtual launch. The session will take place this week on Thursday from 7 to 8 p.m. We have communicated the information on our school website, and we do anticipate that there will be quite a bit of interest. I also wanted to speak to a pilot project that is called Let's Go Fit, and it is a pilot project that some of our life skills classes are participating in. It's an online fitness community that focuses on workouts for people with varying and diverse abilities. It's called Let's Go Fit. We are piloting it at 3 sites this year, and the intention is to provide some feedback and information for other schools who might be interested next year. So it's kind of an interesting opportunity. Our ABA Bonanza, the launch of the ABA Bonanza is today. It is being led by our behavior analysts with the support of Jody. All of our staff will be invited to view pre-recorded presentations from all special education disciplines in an on-demand format. There will also be an opportunity to participate in a panel discussion with the presenters and be eligible for some prizes. With respect to SIA, the SIA Showcase will be held virtually on May 26th. I know that you were also invited to participate and present at the SIA Showcase. Carrie Anton will be the keynote speaker, and there are 10 students, 8 elementary and 2 secondary, who were chosen as Ignite grant winners from the 28 submissions. And we presented to them virtually last week. The team met with each of the students, we invited the parents, and we presented them with certificates and some great prizes. The videos will be played at the Ciac Showcase on May 26th, so everyone will have an opportunity to view those videos. Our speech and language pathologists and CDAs have adopted a new pathway of support for students referred to them with social communication needs. This includes Tier 1 supports before assessment and Tier 2 support for language and/or social cognition based on results of assessments by our speech and language pathologists. Additionally, ongoing opportunities to collaborate with educators and CYCs to support social skill development have been identified as students transition from Tier 2 back to Tier 1. With respect to parent engagement, many of you would have seen that we've been offering weekly sessions, almost weekly, to support parents with respect to mental health and well-being. Our social work, CYC, and psych department have been presenting for the elementary panel, and we do have a session running this week. It is called Family Matters, Raising a Resilient Child, and it will be running on Wednesday evening. And just to note, we have had tremendous response to the videos and people watching the videos after they've been streamed, with many of them being viewed 700, 400 times. So we've had lots of viewers who are coming on, they're going onto the YouTube channel, and we're happy to see that they're useful to our community. And it is worth noting that in May, we will be offering 2 sessions for secondary parents that will focus on mental health and sleep hygiene. And then lastly, I just wanted to mention that we do have our special education open houses that are taking place throughout the board for our various self-contained classes that we do offer. So I'm happy to take any questions, and I know we have some staff on as well if there are any questions.
Great, thanks so much, Stephanie. And thank you for mentioning about the CS Showcase. So if anybody hasn't, I know that there's been a couple of associations that have come forward to say they'd like to participate. So we'd love to have more. So for anyone who hasn't had a chance yet to take a look at that email and respond, we'd love to have as many associations come out that night as possible. Is there any questions at all for Stephanie on her report? Yeah, Director Daly, go ahead.
Thank you, and through you, Madam Chair, not a question, more of a comment, or I guess a thank you. I just want to recognize the work of our spec ed department, both supporting our kids in the classroom, supporting our families, our parents, the amount of work that the department has put in, let's say over the last years, as we've kind of changed to our delivery model in just about every facet of the work they do, I would say is pretty remarkable. So just thank you for that, and keep up the good work.
Thanks so much for that, Pat. I don't mean to take the kudos away from you, Stephanie, but thanks for saying that, Pat, because I do think that that is a really important point that often gets missed. So thank you for stating that. Is there any other questions at all for Stephanie? There was a lot of stuff there. I think it was great. A lot of great information, a lot of great things happening. I'm glad to hear about the participation in those videos. That's always encouraging. So, you know, sounds like there's a lot of stuff coming out of the department, which is fantastic.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, no problem. Okay, if there isn't any other questions then, or if there isn't any questions, we will move on to the trustee report. Trustee Guzzo, do you want to go ahead?
Yes, thank you. Through you, Madam Chair. Really not a lot to report on since our last meeting. There was only one board meeting. I think the Ciac meeting falls a little earlier than normal. Normally we have two board meetings and the policy meeting. I can't even report on the policies because they haven't been brought to the board yet for final approval. We had two motions that we discussed at the last meeting. One of them was prioritizing vaccination for our educational workers in the second phase of the province. So a letter was sent on behalf of our director and our chair to the government and the Minister of Health and Long-Term Care to prioritize our educational workers. Other than that, the meeting ended before we were able to get to staff reports and the school year calendar. So I'm hopeful that we will be able to get to it this week and that our final Ciac meeting will have a very lengthy trustee report.
Thank you very much, Trustee Guzzo. And is there any questions at all on the trustee report? No? Okay. Okay, great. Thank you very much. 8.3, we have the association report from Voice. So Rick, you are up.
Great. Thank you, Brenda. Okay, so just so you all know, just a refresher here, Voice for Deaf and Hard of Hearing Children was established in the 60s by parents to offer support to other families with children who are deaf and hard of hearing. The purpose, of course, at that point was to get their kids mainstreamed and educated alongside their hearing peers. Now the current purpose for Voice is to continue supporting families and introducing families through the Voice network. We have about 1,000 members across Canada. Chapters mainly focused here in Ontario, but also there's also some affiliations in Alberta, Manitoba, and Quebec. And Voice helps to develop and implement programs and services encompassing three main areas, and that's in advocacy, family support, and public education. So now getting on to the report. So May is a big month for the hearing loss world. It's generally it's a speech and language awareness month. So we have a lot of our activities and big yearly events that we have on in May. So the first one, as you see in the report, there's the annual Voice Conference, which is like everything else these days, virtual. And it's a 2-day conference with an array of great speakers and authors and audiologists and speech pathologists that are going to be speaking to the groups. The first day is for, you can see there on the dates of May 7th and May 8th. Friday is mainly for professionals. And the second day, the Saturday, the 8th, is for parents and professionals as well to listen and join the presentations. As you can see there, a lot of professionals attend and get, I guess, the continuing education units through attending this conference as well. The big event for schools in May is our Address Loud Day, which is a chance for the participating schools we encourage schools to have their staff and students dressed in wacky clothing just to raise awareness for hearing loss. It's a fun day for any schools that are involved. We have there's resources available online at the events under the events menu at the Voice website. So yeah, it's normally on a Friday during the month. Now with the lockdown, maybe we're hoping schools can push that to later on in May if it's possible, and so kids can actually hopefully be in school and can show their spirit and get crazy and wear wacky outfits and just raise awareness for hearing loss. Now, what Voice has done with they pivoted pretty well with the lockdowns and the inability to get together for events during the year. They have a lot of webinar series. The Voice executive and directors have been fabulous at arranging supporting seminars and webinars online. One happened last week, which was support for Ciac. Actually, Rhonda, the alternate for Voice, Rhonda, and our Ciac chair, Brenda, spoke. Fabulous job by both of you. You guys are wonderful speakers and very engaging, and I have lots of great information to share for Ciac. That session was basically to have additional Voice members be exposed to what Ciac can do and to encourage more Voice members to sign up for Ciac and to represent their local school boards as a member of Voice on the Ciac committees there. I'm not going to go through all this webinar series here. There's quite a few. There's one coming tomorrow for us at 8 p.m. and there's another one again later this week on April 22nd. Voice has done a great job of also collaborating with other agencies. Here it's with the Rumball Early On Child and Family Center to put on additional webinars to support parents with hearing loss and have people come together and share their journeys. Quite often these webinars are very informative, but they're also great for parents and even some kids to come out, the older kids to come out and share their experiences and kind of help each other out. Obviously, COVID is a pretty stressful time for everyone, and for our members of Voice, it's no different, no less stressful. Sorry. So, other information for Voice, Voice also has the teen outreach program. So basically, it's for teens to give them the tools to, as they grow, to develop strong self-advocacy, obviously communication and leadership skills. And we encourage all our members to have their teens sign up. They click on the link there at the Voice website to join. And there's also a Young Adults with Awareness, which is also another webinar series they have every Wednesday. It says there every youth for youth the ages 13 plus. I think the last meeting actually lowered that to 11 plus. So it's great that they're getting as many kids as possible involved. And this is a chance for kids to come together with young adults with hearing loss and to share their own experiences and to kind of help each other and support each other and share any struggles and successes. And so there's a lot of great things going on with Voice. Honestly, they've done a great job of adapting to the current climate of not being able to have events in person by providing all these webinars and online support systems and generally doing a great job for the membership and for the parents and the children that are deaf and hard of hearing belong to Voice. And I think that's it for me. If anyone has any questions or wants to attend any of the seminars or the webinars, you can either go to the Voice page and check the events. I do believe most of the webinars are free. We have a sponsor. The Elks have provided funding for our webinars to be free for everyone. I do believe there's costs to attend the conference. I think it's $20 for families, so it's relatively minimal. Anyways, that's a lot going on. There's a lot of information, and anyone interested can just go to the Voice webpage or contact myself or Rhonda, and we'd be happy to discuss anything with you. Thank you.
Wow, thanks, Rick.
That's a lot, yeah.
That's the most I've heard Rick speak all ever.
That was a great update. Voice, you guys have been busy, and that's fantastic. I love that there has been some events for parents and then for youth to connect, and I think that's great that you've kept up that momentum, and it sounds like you've got a really good level of engagement. So thanks for sharing that with us. And I'm sorry if I missed it, Rick, because I was listening, but there was so much going on. But for the Dress Loud Day, do we have a specific, I know Speech and Hearing Month is the month of May. Do we have a specific date right now for the board that we recognize it on?
I don't know if there's a specific date, Brenda. I think Andrea emailed me last week and asked me if there was a specific date. There's no dates specified on Voice's end. The only suggestion is maybe preferably it's on a Friday in May, just so it kind of end the week in a happy note. Okay. And obviously with the lockdown, hopefully it's later in May so that hopefully the kids are back in school. So.
Okay. So sorry, Stephanie, go ahead.
Yeah, no problem. I was just going to add to that we do have a memo that's prepared that will be going out to the schools so that we can support the day, and schools have the information, and it is going to be communicated that they can pick any day in May, and as Rick said, like a Friday in May. Okay. It's pretty open.
Awesome. There's always amazing pictures that come out of that day. They're pretty fun. Okay, perfect. Thank you. Is there any questions at all for Rick on the association report? No. Okay. Okay. Thanks, guys. Thanks, everybody, for the reports and the updated information. So we are moving to item number 9. which is our Seac discussion and questions. Sorry, I'll give Andrea a chance to catch up with the agenda. Sorry, Andrea. Okay, perfect. Thank you. I know everyone's having internet issues. So we did not receive any questions from the public at all for the Seac discussion and questions, but a few things to comment on is a reminder to members that any special education plan input is due by April the 23rd. And the link to the form is in the email that was sent out on March the 24th. So if you didn't receive that email, please let myself and Andrea know. We can resend it or send it out. If you have any questions at all, let us know. But if you can, if you are so inclined and you wanted to provide some input on the special education plan, please fill out that form by April the 23rd. We also have some great news around our pro grant. So I know that we talked a little bit at the table about the pro grant, and Maria and Andrea and myself have been chatting, trying to organize some speakers. So thank you to both of you for doing that. And we have managed to get confirmation from a number of speakers that are available. And please, Maria, put your hand up if I leave something out, but we're hoping to have a minimum of 3 speakers. We do have a good number of funds available, and I think we're going to title it a Ciac Speaker Series, and hopefully work with communications to market that and to get that out. We're looking to have our first speaker on May the 12th, and that'll be Michael Ciac. Sorry, other way around. We're looking to have our first speaker actually on May the 6th, and it's Louise. Oh, I don't have her last name. Maria, what's her last name? Do you have it?
Porter. Louise Porter.
Sorry.
Thank you. Sorry, I'm slow with my mic and then my mouse.
No.
Yeah, Louise Porter.
That's okay. Sorry, I should have written that down. I wrote it Louise like I would remember the rest. So Louise Porter for May the 6th is what these aren't confirmed, but that's what we're working with. And then Michael Ciac, he is holding 2 dates for us. So we're hoping to get him for May the 12th. And then we're looking at having Mary Gordon as well speak. And that would be, we have to confirm availability, but perhaps towards the end of May or in June. So pretty excited about that. I think it would be great. And just basing on what people have been commenting on engagement and participation for some of the webinars that are happening, I'm hopeful that we'll have a good turnout. Did I forget anything there, Maria, or is there any questions from anybody?
I think you captured it all, Brenda. I had one question. I don't know. Hopefully it's okay to ask, but another person that we had on the list was Dr. Jean Clinton. And I don't know if we've heard back. Was she on vacation, Andrea? Is that? Sorry to put you on the spot there, but.
Sorry, yes, she was.
Okay.
So yeah, I haven't heard back.
So I guess we might still hear back from her, but because I know she's been very popular in the past. So someone just said she's amazing. I think Rhonda.
Okay.
So yeah, that might be another possibility. But we have 2, which is great, right?
Yeah,
That's more
2.
Than we've had.
3.
I think 2 is more than we've ever had before.
Yeah, I agree. And it's people that want to hear, it's people that you want to hear speak. So it's not us speaking on a Ciac webinar. Not that people don't want to hear us speak, but I think these speakers will be far more engaging. So yeah, it's looking like no matter what, we will be able to confirm 2, possibly 3, and then if we can do that, possibly 4. A lot, again, depending on the budget and availability. But even if we can start it with 2, that would be amazing. Rhonda, you had your hand up?
I just want to say that Jane's been doing a lot of online webinars with the infant hearing program and just things that I've been affiliated with. So I know for certain that she'd be willing to do something with us, with the board. So keep trying, or if you want, I can reach out to her.
You can absolutely. I'm sure Andrea would be fine if you would like to reach out to her, Rhonda.
I will do that. Do you have a date in mind, or should we do this offline? Like,
I mean, we can do it offline. I mean, I think we're
Okay.
looking at, if we have some sort of early May, I think we would be looking for late May, early June. Just so that they're not, we don't want to bombard people too much, but yeah, somewhere around there, but we can also make some accommodations depending on availability.
yeah, I will definitely do that.
Great.
Okay, you're welcome.
Thank you. Is there any other questions from anyone on the speaker series? No? Okay. Some of us are probably more excited than others because we've tried for a while to do an engagement event. So we're kind of, I'm super excited. Paul, you have your hand up. Go ahead.
Yeah, it's not specifically on the speaker, but it's just on the action item I was given. The report or the document that I put together is ready.
Okay.
It's not not to be a roadmap or anything like that, but just some thought-provoking on 3 areas: on goals, on the calendar, and on meeting effectiveness. So I'm just going to look for the chair and for input on what's the best approach. Is it to mail the report out to it, or the, what do you call it, report, the thought-provoking paper out to everybody?
Yeah.
And or to just ask for volunteers now who's interested in joining the subcommittee and mail it out to them?
So,
or send it to the chair and let the chair and the vice chair decide which approach is best. I'm open either way, but it is available and it's about 9 pages, quick reading.
Okay, quick reading. So thank you, Paul. I would say, and if anybody has a different idea, I would say send it to the entire committee. We want to make sure that everybody has the same access to information. So if you want to send it out to everybody and maybe caveat it with saying, who would like to be on the committee, or get a confirmation of that and then decide on sort of your next steps. That's the way that I would suggest doing it. I think that way everybody has a chance to take a look at it. That's my thought.
And just send it through the chair, or send it out directly?
No, Paul, you don't have to send it through the chair. You can send it out to everybody. You should have it. I would hope everybody's, if you need us to distribute it because that's easier for you, then send it to myself and Andrea, and we can send it out on your behalf. But there's no problem at all with you sending it out directly to the members of Ciac.
Okay, even though I don't believe in a reply, I'll use it.
Okay, but like I said, if it's easier for you to have it sent through us, just let us know. You can attach the report for Andrea and I, and we can always send it out to the distribution list.
No, I can send it.
Okay, I have full confidence in you, Paul. Okay, meeting summary and next steps. I don't think we really have anything there that we need to go over unless I'm missing something. Item number 11. So our next agenda meeting, our next meeting, will be on Monday, May the 31st. And this agenda will include a multi-year strategic plan presentation and a summer learning presentation, and possibly the accessibility plan. So it should be another great informational evening for our meeting. And I think that is it. Unless I'm missing anything, does anybody have anything else they want to comment on before we adjourn? Okay, so I don't know if it changed or not, Andrew, but the only regrets that we received was from Marvin. So I just need a resolution to accept the absenteeism, approve the absenteeism. Thanks, Andrea. Is there anyone that wants to move that? Anyone?
Rick will move it.
Thank you, Rick. So moved by Rick, and sorry, seconded by Stephanie. Is that you? Oh, sorry, Samantha. Oh my gosh.
Samantha.
I didn't know. I'm like, I see SS's. I'm like, who is it? Thank you, Samantha. That's fantastic. So seconded by Samantha. Okay, perfect. So can I get a motion to adjourn, and then we can do the closing prayer? Diane, is that your hand up or is that a motion to adjourn?
Either one, whichever you want.
Okay, I just didn't know if you had a question or not. So I will.
Thank you.
Okay, so motion to adjourn by Diane. Do I have a seconder?
Rick will second.
Thank you, Rick. Okay, so the meeting is adjourned. If you wanted to join me in our closing prayer. In the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Blessed are you, O God of all creation. Each day you spread before us the rich and wonderful diversity of the human family created in the divine splendor of your love. Fashioned in your image, you call us to love one another with the same tender care with which you brought us to creation. Each one of us is but one small part of the glory that is you. As we serve the students and families of the Halton Catholic District School Board on the Special Education Advisory Committee, fill us with your grace, guide us with your wisdom, and give us the strength and courage to do your work so that it may always be said of our every act, God saw that it was good. In the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen. Have a wonderful night, everybody, and thank you so much for participating.
Have a good night. Thank you, Brenda. Good night, everyone.